The vast crystal chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across an impossible expanse, its transparent ceiling opening to the void of space. 47 species occupied the tiered seating that spiraled upward from the central speaking platform. Each delegation sat in their environmentally customized pods, some filled with methane, others with liquid ammonia, and a few with modified atmospheric pressures. The humans occupied a modest section on the lower tier, their position a physical manifestation of their standing in the interstellar community. Ambassador Jake Morrison adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform, the silver and blue of Earth's unified government catching the artificial light. His weathered face betrayed the strain of 3 years of council oversight. His once sharp blue eyes had developed a permanent squint from countless hours staring at unfavorable trade agreements. The silver at his temples had multiplied since his appointment. "The trade sanctions against the Procyon colonies will remain in effect," announced Chairman Vexthal, his translucent appendages rippling with authoritative patterns. The Amlari chairman's 7 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Jake had come to recognize as smug satisfaction. "The Council has determined that human expansion threatens the established order of the Orion Spur." Jake's jaw tightened. New Montana and 3 other frontier colonies had been under sanctions for 18 months. Their agricultural surpluses rotted in orbital warehouses, while their manufactured goods collected dust. The Galactic Credit Exchange had devalued human currency by 17% in the past quarter alone. "The sanctions serve no legitimate purpose," Jake argued, his voice measured despite his simmering anger. "Our colonies expand into unclaimed systems. We follow the territorial accords to the letter." Delegate Zorak of the Drari Imperium flicked his armored tail dismissively. "Humans proliferate too rapidly. Your kind would overrun the galaxy if left unchecked." Jake had heard this argument repeatedly. The Council, dominated by long-lived species who measured their civilizations in millennia rather than centuries, viewed humanity's rapid expansion with suspicion, bordering on paranoia. "We have honored every treaty," Jake insisted. "Our colonies are self-sufficient and pose no threat to established territories." A ripple of derisive chittering sounds passed through the Zephyran delegation. Their senior representative, Ambassador Kletch, leaned forward. Translators converted his high-pitched clicks into the common language. "The human insists their so-called democracy produces wise decisions," Kletch announced. "Yet their democratic process elected 3 different governments in the span of a single Zephyran molt cycle. How can such instability be trusted with interstellar responsibilities?" More laughter echoed through the chamber. Jake's ears burned. The mockery of Earth's democratic institutions had become commonplace in council proceedings. Most member species operated under hereditary rule, religious authority, or hive mind consensus. They viewed human electoral politics as primitive and chaotic. Chairman Vexthal raised a limb for silence. "The Council will now address the serious accusations regarding human military activities in the Epsilon Eridani sector." Jake straightened. This was unexpected. Human colonies in that region had maintained strict compliance with demilitarization agreements. The Earth Defense Force had only 2 patrol cruisers assigned to the entire sector. "We have evidence," Vexthal continued, his translator conveying artificial gravity, "that human vessels have transported prohibited weapons technology to non-Council species in violation of Containment Protocol 7 Alpha. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing grainy footage of what appeared to be Earth-designed shuttlecraft docking with vessels of unknown configuration. Data streams indicated weapon signatures. Jake's blood ran cold. The footage was clearly fabricated. The shuttle design had been decommissioned a decade earlier, and the alleged weapon signatures were inconsistent with human technology. But the damage was being done. Delegates muttered among themselves, and the Drari representatives were already calling for punitive action. "This evidence is falsified," Jake protested, activating his own datapad to prepare a rebuttal. "Earth has no operations in that sector beyond our scheduled patrols. I demand verification from independent observers. The evidence has been verified by Council security experts, Vexthul declared, dismissing Jake's protest with a wave. The Council will now vote on Resolution 339, imposing military restrictions on all human colonies and requiring Council inspectors at all human shipyards. Jake felt a tightness in his chest. This wasn't just another sanction. It was an existential threat to human autonomy. With Council inspectors in their shipyards, Earth's technological development would be systematically suppressed. The sanctions would strangle the colonies, potentially causing humanitarian crises on the frontier worlds. As the voting commenced, Jake noticed the predetermined pattern. The major powers, the Amlari Ascendancy, the Drari Imperium, and the Zephyrin Collective, voted first, setting the tone for the lesser powers, who inevitably fell in line. Of 47 species, only 6 ever voted against the Council leadership, and those 6 suffered for their independence. The Zephyrin delegate rose again before his vote. Perhaps humans require guidance, as one guides a primitive species toward civilization. Their democracy, he pronounced the word with evident distaste, produces chaos rather than order. The galaxy requires stability, not the infantile lurching of electoral politics. Laughter rippled through the chamber again. Jake saw several delegates from mid-tier species glance at him, with what might have been sympathy, but could equally have been contempt. In that moment, something broke inside Jake Morrison. 3 years of diplomatic indignities, of watching human colonies suffer under arbitrary restrictions, of being patronized and manipulated, it crystallized into a single, clarifying anger. His communication implant vibrated. A message from Earth. Continue diplomatic engagement. Seek compromise. Jake made his decision. Point of order, he announced, his voice cutting through the voting procedure. Before this resolution is finalized, the human delegation requests the floor. Chairman Vexthul's appendages rippled with annoyance. The voting process cannot be interrupted. Ambassador Morrison. Article 17 of Council Procedure allows any delegation facing punitive measures to address the body before voting concludes. Jake countered. I invoke that right now. A murmur ran through the chamber. Jake rarely cited procedural rules, a fact that gave his invocation additional weight. Very well, Vexthul conceded reluctantly. The human delegate may speak briefly. Jake stepped onto the central platform. The amplification field activated around him, and the chamber's lights dimmed slightly to focus attention on his position. He took a deep breath and straightened his shoulders. For 3 years, I have represented humanity in this chamber, he began, his voice steady and clear. For 3 years, I have watched as this council has systematically disadvantaged human colonies, restricted our trade, limited our growth, and treated our people as second-class citizens of the galaxy. The chamber remained silent. Jake's departure from diplomatic niceties had captured their attention. I have submitted 372 formal protests, he continued. I have proposed 49 compromise resolutions. I have participated in 28 mediation sessions. None of these good faith efforts have been reciprocated. Jake pointed toward the holographic display still showing the fabricated evidence. Now you present falsified data to justify further restrictions on human sovereignty. This is not governance. It is oppression. This is not diplomacy. It is subjugation. Chairman Vexthul's appendages began to pulse with angry patterns. Ambassador Morrison, you will moderate your language or forfeit the floor. Jake ignored him, speaking louder. By the authority vested in me by the United Earth Government, I hereby formally withdraw humanity from all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. A shockwave of noise erupted through the chamber. Several delegates rose to their feet, while others activated emergency communication channels. Vexthul's translator struggled to convey his furious utterances. Jake continued, raising his voice above the commotion. As of this moment, all council privileges in human space are revoked. All council representatives are required to leave human territories within 30 standard days. All council vessels are forbidden from entering human-controlled systems without explicit permission. "This is unprecedented," shouted the Drari delegate. "The council does not recognize unilateral withdrawal." "You no longer have a choice in the matter," Jake replied coolly. "Humanity will no longer submit to the authority of this body. We will forge our own path among the stars, free from your manipulation and prejudice." Chairman Vextel finally restored order by activating the chamber's emergency protocols. A low-frequency harmonic resonated through the space, physiologically calming most species. "Ambassador Morrison," Vextel said, his translator conveying carefully controlled fury. "Your statement borders on declaration of hostilities. I strongly advise you to rescind these words and submit to council authority." Jake removed his council communication badge and placed it on the platform. "This is not a negotiation or a threat," he said quietly. "It is simply a fact. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." With that, he stepped down from the platform and walked toward the exit, leaving a stunned silence behind him. As the doors closed, he heard the chamber erupt into chaos once more. In the diplomatic shuttle back to Earth's embassy on the station, Jake activated his secure communication channel. The face of Secretary General Liana Chen appeared, her expression grave. "You've exceeded your authority, Ambassador," she said without preamble. "I did what was necessary," Jake replied. "The Council was about to vote on measures that would have crippled our colonies and compromised our security. I made a judgment call." "A judgment call?" The Secretary General's voice rose. "You've potentially initiated an interstellar crisis. The Council controls trade routes that our colonies depend on." "Our colonies are suffering already," Jake countered. "The sanctions have reduced New Montana's economy by 30%. New Terra's medical supplies have been restricted for security concerns." This was coming to a head one way or another. Secretary General Chen was silent for a long moment. "The Security Council is meeting in emergency session. Admiral Collins has already placed the fleet on alert. We're receiving reports that Council security forces are preparing to detain you." Jake nodded grimly. "I expected as much. I need extraction from the station." "Captain Rodriguez is already en route in the diplomatic courier. Dock 17, 30 minutes. Don't be late." The Secretary General's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, the colonial governors are already expressing support for your action. Public opinion on Earth is divided, but trending in your favor. That won't matter much if the Council decides to make an example of us," Jake said. "Just get to the courier. We'll discuss next steps when you're safely away." The communication ended. Jake spent the next 20 minutes destroying sensitive materials in the embassy and transferring essential data to secure storage. The small staff, just 4 other diplomats and 2 security officers, worked efficiently, having drilled for emergency evacuation scenarios. "Embassy sensors detect Council security approaching, sir," reported Lieutenant Dawson, the senior security officer. "At least 12 personnel." "Time to go," Jake ordered. "Emergency exit pattern." They slipped out through service corridors, using diplomatic override codes to bypass security checkpoints. Jake could hear alarms activating behind them as Council security discovered the empty embassy. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was waiting at Dock 17, the sleek diplomatic courier's engines already cycling for departure. Her dark eyes scanned their group as they hurried aboard. "Cutting it close, Ambassador," she remarked, sealing the airlock behind them. "Council control is denying our departure clearance." "Override protocols," Jake instructed, strapping into acceleration couch. "Security code Alpha 97. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "That'll burn our diplomatic immunity algorithms. No coming back after this." "There's no going back anyway," Jake replied, as the courier detached from the station, ignoring the frantic communication attempts from Council control. The small vessel accelerated away from the massive Council station, its diplomatic transponder codes shifting to emergency patterns that would confuse pursuit for a few crucial minutes. As they cleared the security perimeter, Rodriguez activated the quantum drive, and the stars stretched into linear patterns before disappearing entirely as the courier entered superluminal space. Jake exhaled slowly, the tension of the past hours catching up with him. Set course for Earth. We have a lot of work to do. Within hours of Jake Morrison's departure from the Council Station, humanity's declaration of diplomatic severance spread across the galaxy. Earth's unified government, after initial shock, rallied behind the decision. Colonial populations, long resentful of Council restrictions, celebrated openly. The Earth Defense Force deployed in a defensive perimeter around human-controlled systems, preparing for potential Council retaliation. Admiral Pete Collins stood on the bridge of the EDS Indomitable, Earth's newest dreadnought. The massive view screen showed the tactical disposition of his fleet at the new Terra system's edge. 27 warships arranged in a three-dimensional defense grid. "Council convoy approaching. Admiral," reported his tactical officer. 5 transport vessels with 2 security cruisers as escort. Collins nodded. "Standard interception pattern. Lieutenant Chen, open a channel when they're in range." The Council convoy slowed as it detected the human blockade. After a moment, a communication request came through. "This is Administrator Pellex of the Galactic Council Trade Authority," announced a tall, spindly being with pale blue skin. "Your vessels are obstructing an authorized supply route. Remove yourselves immediately." Admiral Collins stepped forward. "This is Admiral Pete Collins of the Earth Defense Force. By proclamation of the United Earth Government, all Council vessels are denied entry to human-controlled systems. Your convoy is ordered to alter course and depart the area." The administrator's expression registered shock, followed by indignation. "This blockade violates 17 different trade agreements. We are carrying essential medical supplies for the New Terra colony. New Terra will manage without Council assistance," Collins replied coldly. "Your previous shipments have been systematically short-supplied and overpriced. We're aware of the Council's deliberate strangulation policy toward our colonies." "This is outrageous. The Council will not stand for—" "The Council's opinion no longer matters in human space," Collins interrupted. "You have 15 minutes to alter course, or we will disable your vessels and tow them to the system boundary." The administrator sputtered protest for another minute before the transmission cut off. 14 minutes later, the convoy altered course and departed. Similar scenes played out across human space as Council trade missions, diplomatic envoys, and cultural exchanges found themselves unceremoniously expelled. The Galactic Credit Exchange removed human currency from its systems, attempting to trigger an economic collapse. Instead, human colonies rapidly established direct trade with each other and with non-Council species who had previously been prevented from engaging with humanity by Council restrictions. Captain Amy Patterson, commanding the patrol cruiser EDS Vigilant, intercepted a smuggling operation at the edge of the new Montana system. The Council had begun sponsoring black market operations, hoping to destabilize human colonies by flooding them with addictive substances and illegal technology. "Target vessels refusing to heave to—" "Captain," reported her weapons officer. "They're making a run for the asteroid belt." Patterson nodded grimly. "Disable their engines. Precision strikes only." The Vigilant's laser batteries lanced out, severing the smugglers' propulsion systems with surgical precision. As boarding teams secured the contraband and detained the crew, mostly Drari mercenaries, Patterson received a priority communication from Earth Command. Situation developing at New Terra," Admiral Collins informed her. "A Drari battle group has crossed the boundary line. They're claiming protection of commercial interests. Get there as fast as you can." The skirmish at New Terra became the first direct military confrontation between humanity and the Council. 3 Drari cruisers opened fire on the human defensive perimeter, clearly expecting an easy victory against the supposedly inferior human technology. Instead, they encountered next-generation quantum shields and phase-shifted weapon systems that Dr. Helen Wright's research team had developed but kept hidden from Council inspectors. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. 2 Drari vessels were disabled, and the third retreated with significant damage. The Council officially disavowed the Drari action as unauthorized aggression, but intercepted communications revealed the attack had been sanctioned at the highest levels. While the Council's military probes tested human defenses, Jake Morrison undertook a different kind of mission. Using connections established during his time as ambassador, he arranged clandestine meetings with representatives from species who had suffered under Council domination, but lacked the strength to resist independently. The Krell Confederacy, reptilian traders who had been denied full Council membership for centuries, were the first to express interest in alliance. The methane-breathing Zordi followed. Then the silicon-based Lithosians, who had been classified as semi-sentient, despite their advanced mathematical civilization. The Council maintains power through division, Jake explained during a secret meeting aboard a neutral trading station. They prevent direct contact between non-member species, control all significant trade routes, and ensure no coalition can form to challenge their authority. Yet, humans have successfully broken away, noted Ambassador Krex of the Krell, his scaled head tilting with curiosity. How have you maintained your economy without Council trade networks? We were already partially independent, Jake explained. Council restrictions forced us to develop alternative supply chains years ago. But more importantly, we've discovered something the Council has deliberately kept hidden. He activated a holographic display showing star charts with newly plotted hyperspace routes, passages through subspace that bypassed traditional Council-controlled corridors. Dr. Helen Wright's navigational team mapped these routes using quantum resonance technology, Jake continued. They connect our territories directly to yours, bypassing Council checkpoints entirely. With these routes, we can establish a trade network independent of Council control. The representatives examined the data with growing excitement. Centuries of Council domination had conditioned them to believe alternatives were impossible. The Council will respond with force, warned the Lithosian delegate, her crystalline voice resonating with concern. They already have, Jake acknowledged. But they discovered something unexpected. We can defend ourselves. More importantly, united we present a force they cannot easily dismiss. Over the following weeks, clandestine agreements formed the foundation of what would later be called the Independent Systems Alliance. Human ships began appearing in previously restricted systems, offering direct trade without Council tariffs or restrictions. Diplomatic channels opened between species who had been kept isolated from one another. The Council's response was predictably harsh. Trade sanctions expanded to include any species dealing with humans. Military patrols increased along traditional space lanes. Propaganda portrayed humans as dangerous revolutionaries threatening galactic stability. None of it worked. 6 months after Jake's withdrawal from the Council chamber, the galactic economy had transformed. Council tax revenues had dropped by 37% as trade increasingly flowed through the new hyperspace routes. Minor species previously dependent on Council approval found themselves suddenly empowered by direct access to markets. Chairman Vextol called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The Crystal Chamber, once a symbol of unassailable authority, now seemed fragile and exposed. The human contagion must be contained, Vextol declared to the assembled delegates. Their rebellion threatens the very foundation of our civilization. I propose a united military action to bring them back into compliance. The Drari delegation immediately voiced support. Their previous military humiliation demanded vengeance. Several smaller species followed suit, fearful of opposing the traditional powers. But Delegate Zorn of the Procyon Union, a mid-tier power that had maintained careful neutrality, raised an unexpected objection. The humans have established 15 direct trade agreements with my people's outer colonies. Zorn stated. These arrangements have increased colonial prosperity by 23%. Why should we sacrifice economic well-being for an unnecessary conflict? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Similar situations had developed across numerous systems. The economic reality was undermining political loyalty. Prosperity built on chaos is no prosperity at all, countered Vextul. The human model of unregulated exchange threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. Perhaps, suggested another delegate cautiously, a diplomatic re-engagement might be preferable to military action. The humans have demonstrated unexpected capabilities. A negotiated settlement. Negotiation implies equals, interrupted the Drari representative angrily. Humans are upstart primitives, who must be taught their place. The Imperium will lead a punitive expedition with, or without council authorization. The Drari Imperium launched its attack 3 days later. A battle fleet of 27 warships targeted the human colony at Epsilon Eridani, expecting to establish dominance through overwhelming force. The resulting battle became a turning point in galactic history. Admiral Collins had anticipated the attack. When the Drari fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found not just human defenders, but also vessels from the Krell Confederacy and Lithosian Union, the first joint military operation of the nascent alliance. The battle was broadcast across all communication channels, bypassing council sensors through Dr. Wright's newly developed quantum entanglement transmitters. Species throughout the galaxy watched as the feared Drari fleet, historically used by the Council to intimidate dissent, was systematically defeated by the combined Alliance forces. General Frank Martinez, commanding the Alliance fleet, offered surrender terms to the remaining Drari vessels. This was never a war we sought, his galaxy-wide transmission declared. We desire only the freedom to determine our own destinies, without Council interference. That right extends to all sentient species, including the Drari, should they choose to exercise it. The impact was immediate and profound. Council authority, based largely on the perception of invincibility, cracked. Demonstrations erupted on dozens of worlds as populations demanded their governments establish relations with the human alliance. In a desperate move, the Council leadership authorized a direct approach to Earth. Special Envoy Trellix arrived at the edge of the Sol system under diplomatic protocols, requesting a meeting with human authorities. Jake Morrison, now serving as Secretary of Foreign Relations, met with the envoy aboard a neutral station. Carl Johnson, Earth's new public diplomat, accompanied him as witness. The Council is prepared to make significant concessions. Trellix began without preamble. Full membership status for humanity, removal of all trade restrictions, even positions on the Security Committee. Jake smiled thinly. 6 months ago, those offers might have meant something. Today, they're irrelevant. Ambassador Morrison. Secretary Morrison, Jake corrected. And you misunderstand our position. We're not seeking better terms within the Council system. We've moved beyond it entirely. Trellix's translator conveyed his confusion. Beyond? There is nothing beyond the Council. It is the foundation of galactic civilization. It was the foundation, Jake agreed. Now it's becoming a relic. 17 former Council affiliates have already signed agreements with our alliance. 23 others are in negotiations. The galaxy is reorganizing itself based on mutual respect and equitable exchange. This is temporary insanity, Trellix insisted. Centuries of stability cannot be discarded for untested idealism. Your stability was stagnation for most species, countered Carl Johnson, his diplomatic training evident in his measured tone. The Council preserved power for the founding members, while systematically suppressing development among later arrivals. That system was never sustainable. The envoy's frustration was palpable. The Council will not accept this dissolution. Military action would be disastrous for all involved, Jake interrupted. The Drari already demonstrated the futility of that approach. We don't seek conflict, but we will defend our right to self-determination, as will our allies. The meeting ended without resolution. As Trellix departed, Jake turned to Johnson. They still don't understand what's happening. They think this is a negotiating tactic. Can you blame them? Johnson replied. Their system has endured for thousands of years. The concept of genuine change is almost incomprehensible. They'll comprehend it soon enough, Jake said grimly. The real question is, how many species will be caught in the collapse? The Council's final desperate gambit came 2 weeks later. Chairman Vextol called a special galactic summit, ostensibly to address the human situation. All member species were required to attend, with punitive consequences threatened for absence. When the session convened, only 29 of the 47 member species appeared. The others had already committed to the human-led alliance or declared independence. The physical gaps in the chamber's seating tiers symbolize the Council's diminishing authority. This body has maintained peace and prosperity for millennia, Vextol declared, his appendages rippling with agitation. A temporary economic disruption cannot be allowed to destroy what we have built. Today, we will vote on Resolution 542, authorizing unified action against the human rebellion. The resolution would effectively declare war on humanity and its allies. The remaining Council loyalists began voting, following the traditional pattern of deferring to the leading powers. Then, Ambassador Klen of the Bortax Federation, traditionally a reliable Council supporter, rose unexpectedly. Before casting our vote, Klen announced, the Federation requests clarification on certain intelligence reports. Vextol's appendages stiffened. What reports? This is not the proper procedural moment for reports indicating secret Council communications with the Human Alliance. Klen continued implacably. Specifically, offers of privileged status in exchange for abandoning their other allies. A shockwave passed through the chamber. Vextol's translator struggled to convey his spluttering denial. Ambassador Klen activated the chamber's display system, overriding security protocols. The recorded meeting between Envoy Trellix and Jake Morrison appeared, including private segments that had occurred after the official discussion. If humans return to Council authority, Trellix was saying in the recording, arrangements could be made regarding the lesser species. Their resources could be divided advantageously. Jake's disgusted refusal played out for all to witness. This session is suspended, Vextol declared frantically. That recording is unauthorized and falsified. It is authenticated by quantum verification, Klen responded. And it is merely one of 17 similar approaches the Council leadership made to human representatives, all while publicly preparing for war. The chamber descended into chaos. 3 delegations walked out immediately. Others engaged in heated arguments. The Drari representative physically attacked a smaller delegate who had suggested surrender. When order was finally restored, the Council had effectively collapsed. 14 additional species announced their withdrawal during the session itself. The remaining loyalists were too few to maintain the pretense of galactic authority. 1 year after Jake Morrison's dramatic exit from the Council chamber, representatives from 73 spacefaring species gathered at Kepler Station for the inaugural Congress of the Galactic Alliance. The new chamber, designed with transparent democratic principles, arranged all delegations in a circular pattern with equal positioning. Jake, serving as Earth's senior representative, took the podium for the opening address. The gathered delegates, former Council members, newly recognized independent species, and civilizations previously classified as pre-spacefaring, represented the most diverse assembly in recorded galactic history. 1 year ago, humanity stood alone against an entrenched system of inequality and control. Jake began. Today, we stand together as equal partners in a new galactic community founded on principles of mutual respect, fair exchange, and collective security. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and sensory appendages of dozens of different life forms. The old Council maintained that hierarchy was necessary for stability, that some species were naturally suited to rule, while others required guidance. That democracy was a primitive concept unsuited to interstellar governance. Murmurs of recognition passed through the assembly. Today, we begin the grand experiment of proving them wrong, Jake continued. Our alliance will face challenges. We will make mistakes. But we will face those challenges together, as equals, with the combined wisdom of 73 unique evolutionary paths. He gestured to the simple wooden gavel on the podium, a deliberate contrast to the ostentatious crystal scepter the council chairman had wielded. I now call for nominations for the first chairperson of the Galactic Alliance Congress. In accordance with our charter, this position will rotate annually among all member species. To Jake's surprise, Ambassador Krex of the Krell Confederacy rose first. The Krell nominate Secretary Jake Morrison of Earth, Krex announced. It was human courage that showed us all a better path. Human wisdom should guide our first steps. Seconding calls echoed from across the chamber. Despite his protests about the symbolism of beginning with a human chairperson, the vote was unanimous. As Jake accepted the simple gavel, he reflected on the extraordinary journey from that moment of decision in the council chamber. What had begun as a desperate act of defiance had catalyzed a galactic revolution, not through force of arms, but through the contagious power of freedom and fair dealing. The session is now open, he declared, bringing the gavel down to mark the beginning of a new era in galactic history. The sound echoed through the chamber, not the crystalline chime of the old council, but the solid, grounded thunk of real wood on wood, practical, unadorned, democratic. Outside the chamber's viewports, ships from dozens of worlds moved in their orbits. Emblems of their respective species displayed alongside the new Alliance insignia, trade vessels, science ships, and defensive patrols, all operating under unified protocols developed through consensus rather than imposed from above. In his private quarters that evening, Jake reviewed the day's proceedings with satisfaction. The initial committee assignments had been distributed equitably. Working groups had formed to address outstanding territorial disputes. Even the former council loyalist who had reluctantly joined the alliance had participated constructively. His communication panel chimed, signaling a message from Admiral Collins. "Congratulations, Mr. Chairman," Collins said with a grin. "Not bad for a diplomat who exceeded his authority." Jake laughed. "I'm still not convinced this wasn't a cosmic accident. We could have just as easily sparked a galactic war." "Maybe," Collins acknowledged. "But I don't think so. The council was a decaying structure. It would have collapsed eventually. You just accelerated the process and ensured something better replaced it." "The hard part is just beginning," Jake reminded him. "Building is always more difficult than tearing down." True enough. But Dr. Wright's team has some interesting proposals for the scientific cooperation initiatives. And General Martinez reports that the joint defense exercises are proceeding better than expected. The Lithosians have tactical approaches we never considered. Jake nodded, feeling a profound sense of rightness. The diverse perspectives now contributing to galactic governance were already producing innovations that the stratified council system had suppressed for centuries. "Any word from the Amlari?" he asked. The former council chairman's species had retreated into isolation after the collapse. "Ambassador Johnson thinks they'll come around eventually," Collins replied. "Pride takes time to heal, but their colonial territories are already suffering without alliance trade. Economic reality has a way of overcoming political stubbornness." After concluding the call, Jake stepped to the viewport of his quarters. The vast sweep of the galaxy spread before him. Countless stars, representing worlds that now faced a future of self-determination rather than centralized control. He thought back to that moment in the council chamber, the accumulated frustration, the clarity of purpose, the simple word "no" that had changed everything. One human standing against millennia of entrenched power had seemed futile. But the hunger for freedom, it turned out, had been silently building across countless worlds, waiting only for someone to demonstrate that resistance was possible. As he watched, a formation of ships from 6 different alliance members executed a perfectly synchronized passage, a ceremonial display to mark the Congress's first day. Their diverse designs complemented one another, moving in patterns that respected each vessel's unique capabilities, rather than forcing conformity. It was, Jake thought, the perfect symbol for the new galactic order. Not the brittle perfection of crystal, but the adaptive, resilient strength of diverse parts working in voluntary harmony. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be conflicts to mediate, agreements to forge, and the 1,000 complications of democratic governance across interstellar distances. But for tonight, Jake Morrison allowed himself to savor the victory, not for humanity alone, but for all who had lived too long under the shadow of those who confused dominance with leadership. The stars seemed brighter somehow. Perhaps it was merely his imagination, or perhaps it was the light of freedom spreading across the galaxy, one world at a time.